Welcome to the Natalie Tysdal Podcast. I'm a health journalist, and throughout my career, I've spent a lot of time asking questions, digging into research, and trying to help people better understand the health information that affects their lives. There is so much new science and medical research emerging right now, and it can be hard to know what's credible, what's promising, and what questions we should be asking our own healthcare providers. On this podcast, I talk with experts to break down the science behind some of the biggest conversations happening in health today so that you can better understand your options and you can stay informed. Today, we're diving into the world of regenerative medicine, specifically the research around stem cells and something called exosomes. My guest is Caleb Granger, who works in regenerative medicine and helps bring therapies involving stem cell-derived exosomes to providers across the country. In this conversation, we're going to talk about how regenerative capacity changes as we age, why inflammation plays such a major role in many chronic health issues, and what scientists are learning about the signals stem cells release that might be helping the body repair itself. Also, you're going to hear why some researchers say that aging might actually be a math problem between regeneration and degeneration inside the body. But before we get into that conversation today, I want to mention one of the health resources I personally recommend. We know that gut health is something we have to talk about because it impacts so many systems in the body, from inflammation to immunity and brain health. One of the probiotic companies that I trust is BiotiQuest. Their formulas are designed around how probiotic strains actually work together in the microbiome. You're going to get a discount if you use the link that I'm giving you because they have given this discount to my listeners. We know how important gut health is, right, to your overall wellness. So I encourage you to check this out. You can find the link to BiotiQuest at natalietysdal.com. That's natalietysdal.com/favorites. natalietysdal.com/favorites. And now here's my conversation on regenerative medicine with Caleb Granger. Caleb, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. Excited to talk with you.
Well, this whole world of regenerative stem cell, I know we're going to talk about exosomes, but for some people this might be new. We have heard the buzzword for many of stem cells, but give us an indication, an idea, the background. What are stem cells? Why do we need to care?
Sure. Stem cells are the healing cellular factories in all of our bodies. They are what carries out the healing. They carry the healing instructions, and they are kind of the native healing factory in your body. When we're young, we have hundreds of millions of native stem cells in our bodies doing all this healing and regeneration. 150 to 200 million in our mid to late teens. Of course, that's when our stem cells, native stem cells, and thus our regenerative capacity peaks, is when you're about 17 or 18.
Mm.
After that peak, the total number of stem cells that your body produces, carries, and the potency of each of your stem cells, all of those things start going down, right? Isn't this typical? Starts going down after 17 or 18 years old.
Just like everything else.
Yeah, right. And so this is kind of the aging process, is as our regenerative capacity drops, the environmental, genetic, and self-inflicted degeneration that our body faces increases, right? Those things don't go down. So we reach a point when our native regenerative capacity, including our stem cells, all no longer overwhelm the degeneration that we face. And then we start degenerating. And that degeneration continues. It's tissue degeneration. It's organ degeneration. It's our skin, our hair, our eyesight, our hearing, right? Everything that we have is overwhelmed by degeneration over the years. And that is purely a math problem, is what we're finding. It's the fact that our regenerative capacity drops while degeneration continues. So the way stem cells work is these cells secrete these information carrying microparticles about 1/1000th the size of a cell that carry all the proteins, growth factors, and regenerative signals. They carry the healing blueprints that the stem cell produces. Those tiny particles are called exosomes, EXOSOMES. So stem cell exosomes are the secretion of stem cells that carry the healing blueprints for our body.
So why do they I hear you on a large scale basis, but when we hear stem cells most often, it's when we have a problem.
Mhm.
I broke my shoulder a few years ago, and that's when I think of like, I need more stem cells. Is that when it
Mhm.
matters more when we actually break something or an organ is not working well? Or do we just need them for everyday life and feeling and looking good?
So both of those things, we need them. The body needs them and utilizes them every day. Every day, your body makes new stem cells, right? But as we age, it makes less and less stem cells, and the stem cells that we make are
Mhm,
less and less potent, less and less healing. What you're talking about, and what kind of the public is familiar with, is the
mhm,
therapeutic use of stem cells as a therapy. And so that's been around. We've
mhm,
understood that this is how the body heals for about 30 years. And so you think about in the last 20, 30 years, there's been a bunch of research. Famous athletes and
mhm.
celebrities have gotten stem cells right in their knees or their hips, or they've used stem cell treatments. What we thought happened in the past 20, 25 years was that if you took either the body's own stem cells and concentrated them, or if you took stem cells from another donor and transplanted them, the idea was that if we could take these healing factories and transplant more of them, basically give your body more regenerative capacity, that those stem cells would go into an area like a degenerated knee or hip or in an IV and just go systemically, and that they would stay alive, take hold in your body, in the recipient's body, and eventually replicate and turn into new tissue. So if you had no cartilage in your knee, you'd put stem cells in your knee. And the idea was that if those stayed alive, they would stay alive, engraft, and essentially become new tissue, become new cartilage, and add new cartilage. What we now know since the late 2010s, we now know that that's not how stem cells work.
Hmm,
The way stem cells work is by secreting exosomes. These information carrying microparticles
mhm.
do all the healing work of the stem cell. So, stem cells, we now know, are essentially expensive, inflammatory exosome carriers. We know that when you get stem cells, either your own stem cells or donated stem cells, and you use them therapeutically, that your body is super efficient in flushing and killing 99% of the stem cells in the first 24 hours. There's a massive inflammatory
Wow.
Anyone who's ever gotten stem cell injections, like in your knee, your physician will tell you, stay off that knee for a week or two because there's going to be this massive inflammatory response. That happens all the time. Another therapeutic is called platelet rich plasma. It's very popular.
Mhm.
It's a much lower concentration version of regenerative medicine. They take your own blood draw, spin that down in a centrifuge, and essentially give you 80,000 to 100,000 of your own stem cells back into a specific area. Now, what we know is when your regenerative capacity overwhelmed your degeneration, you had 150 to 200 million stem cells in your body. That was when you were 16, 17, 18. Today, for instance, me as a 50-year-old, if I'm in peak health, I've got maybe 50 million native stem cells circulating in my body every day. So from 200 million, when my regeneration was outstripping my degeneration as a teenager, to now at 50, I've only got 50 million. And those 50 million are each significantly less potent.
Mhm.
They're lower regenerative capacity per cell. So I've got less cells and they're lower potency. So math wise, this is why you don't regenerate when you're 50 years old, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
you don't have the regenerative capacity. What I want your listeners to know is that scientifically, now, what we can do reproducibly is raise the body's regenerative capacity. The gross regenerative capacity of your body can be raised to the point that you can now overwhelm the degeneration and start regenerating again.
Wow. So not getting any type of injection or anything, you're letting your own body do this?
So we do that by flooding the body with regenerative signals.
Okay.
We get those signals from 0 day old, from the most potent mesenchymal stem cells, the most healing stem cells that the body ever produces, which are 0 day old placental and
Mhm.
umbilical mesenchymal stem cells. After a
Okay.
healthy, full term delivered pregnancy, planned C-section, the mother consents and has a rigorous inclusion criteria to be able to donate her placental material. And once that's done, we use FDA audited and accredited and American Association of Tissue Bank audited and accredited procurement sources to get that tissue. We get the stem cells from that live tissue, 0 day old live tissue.
Wow.
Now, when we get those stem cells, they've just spent the last 9 months processing everything that's needed to create an entire perfect human being from 2 cells, right? Those mesenchymal stem cells have processed everything to make perfect hair, perfect skin, perfect eyes, perfect brain, perfect muscle, perfect tendon, right? They've just done that for 9 months. We get those max generative potential cells, take the healing signals from those cells in massive amounts, and then deliver those totally inflammation free. They can't carry genetic information, viral or bacterial load, so they're incredibly safe. There's no contraindications. It can't cause a reaction. You can't, there's no contraindication for any pharmacological, any previous condition. They're just super, super safe. And they flood your body with healing directions.
Oh,
And so we can give in one treatment 500 million mesenchymal stem cells worth of healing in one treatment. So you talk
that
about
is fascinating.
it's
So
remarkable.
how are they injected? How are you consuming this?
Hmm. Sure. So there's a variety of ways, and it's really based on condition and kind of the modality that best suits the patient. So we can do it via IV push. So of course that takes a needle stick, and
Mhm.
then it takes about 5 minutes to put 500 million mesenchymal stem cells worth of healing directly into your bloodstream. We have a sublingual spray from home. So it's a spray that goes under your tongue, 5 sprays under your tongue, morning and night. We have an intranasal spray. Studies
Huh.
have shown if you take exosomes via intranasal spray in 1 hour, 90% of those exosomes are in your midbrain and hippocampus, taking away inflammation, regenerating the vasculature of the brain, regenerating brain tissue. So you think about all the degenerative and inflammatory brain-based or skull-based conditions, there's a bunch of them, including all the dementias, vascular
Mhm.
dementia, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, traumatic brain injury. It's incredible. Some of our most gratifying patients are pediatric autism, has an incredible effect on that. Even long time depression. Again, some of the most gratifying patients are those who have been on, 15 to 20 years of full time SSRIs,
Mhm.
and be able to get off of SSRIs and essentially regenerate healthy brain tissue and all the healthy neural connections. We can do that with stem cell exosomes.
So
And then, of
how
course,
common is this? Are a lot of people doing it?
mhm. So it's all relative, right? We've treated 14,000, close to 14,000 patients in the last 3 years. About 10,000 last year. We're on track to treat about 20,000 this year.
Through
There,
different offices around the country, around the
that's
world?
right.
Like,
So we're the manufacturer. It's only available in the U.S. right now. We're the manufacturer. We're based in Austin, Texas, and so we work closely with providers in really any Texas metro area, but we work all over the nation with providers and provide placental and umbilical stem cell exosomes to providers everywhere. And
I have so many questions. It's so fascinating. How how are people paying for it? How expensive is it? And is it something that insurance is even touching yet, or is it still new enough that it's not?
Yeah, unfortunately, we're a few years away from private insurance reimbursing for it. That's something that we're working towards, and we're working on a state by state level to do what's needed in order for that to happen. But right now, it is cash pay only. It is HSA qualified, so health savings account. You can use those. And typically, what we do is, and we found the best results, not just being episodic in nature. So not just doing one treatment, right? One IV. We get the best results when we can, again, raise your regenerative baseline, raise the body's regenerative capacity consistently. And so we do that with usually IVs once every 2 weeks or once a month or once every 2 months, and then daily, depending on the condition, severity and time of the condition, and daily sublingual. So we do a bolus, pump up your regenerative capacity and then keep it high with daily sublingual spray. And that has an incredible systemic result. We know from doing, for instance, 1 week of our typical protocols, meaning one IV and 6 days of sublingual, that results in a 500 to 1000% on average, 500 to 1000% reduction in total body inflammation.
Mm-hmm.
So we knew that was happening with our clients. We knew they were seeing this massive inflammation reduction. We didn't know that it was a 500% reduction, that people's SED rate or ESR was
Uh-huh.
going from 150 to 15, right? Just a massive, massive drop. What that means is the felt effect of that, rather, is not just, some orthopedic symptom. You've got a hurt knee, you've got a hurt elbow. It's not just that that goes away. We saw clients and see clients where they're primarily wanting to treat orthopedic symptomology, but their eczema goes away
Hmm.
or their psoriasis goes away that they've been treating with steroid cream for
Yeah.
2.5 years. That totally resolves. Their gums grow back, right? Their eyesight improves, their hearing improves, their tinnitus goes away, is totally resolved. These are all the things that your low to mid level total body inflammation that you've had for 10 years,
Hmm.
15 years, when you can miraculously just take that away. What ends up happening is, even if we weren't flooding your body with healing signals, your body's own healing capacity would now be able to go heal these individual areas if you didn't have this total body inflammation.
Yeah.
And so just taking the inflammation away has a profound result. And then we also add on hundreds of millions of mesenchymal stem cells worth of healing signals into that mix.
So let me ask you, is there a downside? Like, is there anything people who are not eligible for this, it's just not for them, or are there side effects?
None of those things.
So across the board, it can help anyone.
No contraindications. In fact, there's so one of the things that's so profound about this, people haven't heard of stem cell exosomes,
Mm-hmm.
but they need to be assured that what stem cell exosomes are just how stem cells work. We
Uh-huh.
now know in the last 6 or 7 years, this is how stem cells work. So there's 25 years of stem cell data in the peer reviewed published literature, medical literature. There's 7,500 or more randomized controlled trials using stem cells as a therapeutic in humans, a massive amount of data. What we now know is all of that stem cell data is stem cell exosome data because the way the stem cells
Mm.
healed was through exosomes. We now know that. It's like if for the last 30 years we knew that the sun uh, helped plants grow. But in the last 6 years, we now understand the specific mechanism by which the sun helped plants grow
Mhm.
was photosynthesis.
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
there
We just
wasn't
understand it. Yeah.
that's it. There wasn't exosome studies 7 years and longer.
Yeah.
From 1965 to 2019, there's no studies on exosomes. From 2020 to today, there's close to 43,000 studies. on stem cell exosomes as a healing therapy. There's never been a therapy, a drug, any sort of medical intervention that has that level
Yeah.
of clinical and preclinical data collection associated with it in a 5-year time period. Nothing has even come close. And the reason why we have this is because we now know this is how stem cells work.
Hmm.
And so it's building on all the data that we already have, all the safety data that we already have related to stem cells, and adding to that.
So, is the race on now? You're manufacturing, other people manufacturing? It's like, wow, this is the newest great thing. We all have to capture this, and how difficult is it to uh, to get the donations? I mean, that's a whole nother level of
Mhm.
collecting, right? I mean, I have 3
Yeah.
kids. Wish I would have collected it.
Yes. Isn't that funny? I've got one son and I feel the same way. Of course, I didn't do that. What we now know is that's so valuable. That
Mhm.
material is absolutely so
How
valuable.
long does it last? Like, once you collect it, is it need to be used right away, or is it preserved?
It is preserved. So we have it's fresh frozen. So exosomes, the umbilical derived have a 2-year shelf life.
Hmm.
The placental derived, which are the most potent, have a 3-year shelf life. So there's a method for preserving them that is, not a controversial method. It's used all over, and so we're able to do that really consistently. We also can get a fair amount of volume. Again, these
Hmm.
exosomes are 1/1000th the size of a cell,
Wow.
so they're
So
they're
each collection is helping how many people?
yeah, we can get, hundreds of vials of exosomes out
Mm.
of one placental specimen.
Wow.
So there isn't right now a supply issue, and I don't anticipate there will be a supply issue. It kind of speaks to what there isn't is some special formula that only we have. And so it kind of speaks to why maybe Pfizer or Merck, right, or one of these other pharmaceuticals, that whole business model is to make something in a lab that has
Mhm.
intellectual property around it.
Mhm.
Then once that gets out, no one else can mimic that
Mhm.
in America for 7 years. And so that creates an incredible financial incentive to make something unique, to find new conditions that your unique thing can
Yeah.
treat in a way that nothing else can, right? Some
Yeah.
unique symptom that this can treat. That's the whole pharmacological model.
Mhm.
This is not that. Exosomes are abundantly available in nature. It would be like if science just figured out that water helped with hydration,
Yeah.
right? Well, Merck can't do anything
Instead of
with water.
creating new water. Well,
Yeah,
you may try, but
they can try. They can do water. You could do exosomes plus your special formula, or you could do a special delivery, a proprietary delivery of exosomes. Those are two areas. And in fact, pharma companies are using exosomes as a delivery mechanism because the body accepts them
Mm.
so fully.
Yeah.
They're loading exosomes with their specific pharmacological intervention
Yeah.
and, and their DNA strain. That is definitely an area of investment that kind of big pharma is working on. That's very different than mesenchymal stem cell exosomes used therapeutically. There is no downside. You can't overdose on exosomes. There's no contraindications. The way they are built, they don't carry the things that can cause inflammatory
Mhm.
responses.
Mhm.
They don't pass on genetic information from a donor to a recipient like cells do. All the negatives that were associated with stem cells, and there were negatives, are alleviated with exosomes and they're more concentrated. The positives are amplified.
Yeah.
So it's like stem cells on steroids or stem cell concentrate,
Mhm.
all
Mhm.
the good, none of the negative, and the economics are such that you can get exosome treatments for a third of the cost of what you can get a much lower concentration, higher inflammation stem cell treatment today.
Hmm.
So It's all the good things, right?
It's a really it sounds unbelievable because it's like, wow, why did I not know this before? Which is why I wanted to have you on and talk about it. Someone listening is thinking, why do I need this? I'm actually I think of myself as pretty healthy. Why do I need this? And if I am interested, where do I go get it?
Mhm. So what I would recommend, you'll have all of our information, our website and socials. I really advise people to reach out to us and we can connect you with either preferred providers or with us directly and get you treatment here in the US. Uh, why you should use it now, right? If you're an adult, is there's very easy to track markers that are related to your biological age and the age and functionality of your organs. Things like A1C, AST, ALT, your total body inflammation, all of those things are almost directly tied to aging and mortality.
Hmm.
What we see consistently is all of those age related organ health, systems health related markers drop by double digits with consistent exosome use. And so you could be in great shape at 35, 45, 65, and still be in better shape, right? Still get, an example is for instance, for me, 2 years ago, I started doing IVs every 2 months, exosome IVs every 2 months. My HSCRP, which is the most discriminating measure of total body inflammation, it's a blood panel test, shows my total body inflammation was 2.3 2 years ago. And I started doing it once every 2 months IVs. After that first year, it went from 2.3, which is kind of low inflamed. It's, less than 2 is the healthy marker. And so my 2.3 at 48 years old, I was fine. It's a little bit inflamed, zero point 0.3 over 2. That went from 2.3 to 1.2.
Wow.
Last year, I started doing once a month IVs, daily sublingual throughout the year. By the end of last year, December of last year, it went from 1.2 to zero point 0.1. At 50 years old, so from 48 to 50, my total body inflammation went from 2.3 to zero point 0.1. 0.1 is the lowest registrable inflammation
Inflammation.
marker
Wow.
for CRP. It's like
Yeah.
having the inflammation of a 7-year-old, right?
Do you feel that difference?
Absolutely. So as an athlete, right, was a college athlete and stay active today, having no joint or tendon pain,
Mm.
having, no matter what I do, right? That's the main thing that I feel, right? When you're working out and my elbows would hurt or my
Hmm.
ankles would hurt or my knees would hurt,
Hmm.
always had knee pain. To have that at 50 be totally gone, right? Now, I can still hurt myself. I can still overdo it. What will happen if I overdo it is instead of in the past, when I was 45, not on exosomes, if I hurt myself, now suddenly this is an injury added to the catalog of injuries that
Yeah.
I then have to manage, right? And years go by and my regenerative capacity can't outstrip the degeneration that I've given my knee, for instance.
Yeah.
Well, today at 50, if I hurt myself, it heals.
Hmm.
It heals. And so,
I would
it's
think you're
an
really popular with athletes.
I'll tell you, we've now in the last probably 6 months, we're working with about 35 NFL and NBA guys and some of the biggest names in the UFC,
Hmm.
all the folks, of course, who you would expect if you could have something that would increase your regeneration, keep you totally healthy, no matter what you were uh, giving your body in terms of degeneration. These are the folks who would do that, and indeed they are.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Is
it's
it
not just them. These are the ones whose bodies, are
uh,
directly related to their
yeah,
paycheck. We
absolutely.
all, to some degree, our energy is related to
Yeah,
our paycheck, our
sure.
livelihood. Our bodies are still, even if we're not athletes,
Yeah.
you still want to get the absolute most out of your physical body, and that's what this allows you to do.
Is it affordable for the average person? Could you get on smaller dose or more less frequent dose to make it something that average person could do?
Typically our protocols, we'll do 60 and 90-day protocols, depending on your condition and how you come to us. Those 60 and 90-day protocols, which we then will continue, kind of throughout the year, we want to raise that regenerative capacity as quickly and as much as possible. Those will be anywhere from a high 4 figures to a low 5 figures. And that includes, again, multiple IVs, daily sublingual. It's literally billions, 3, 4, 5, 6 billion mesenchymal stem cells worth of healing. And so you compare that to other regenerative modalities. For instance, you could go overseas, you could go to Panama or Colombia. Those are the only places that you could conceivably get hundreds of millions of stem cells, and those will start typically at about $20 to $25,000 for
Wow.
100 to 200 million stem cells. We can do a 500 million 0-day old live tissue derived placental stem cell IV for anywhere from 3,500 to 6,500, depending on the market
Hmm.
and the provider. So a massive difference, 5 times more healing for a tenth of the cost.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to see how you grow, how much more common this gets in more offices. Something that people just generally understand. It's why I love doing what I do in health news. Is when things like this come out, you're like, "Wow, that's really
Yes.
amazing." Yeah,
You know, I'll tell you, there's 200 to 300 new peer-reviewed published studies being published every week on stem cell exosomes as a healing therapy for every degenerative and inflammatory condition. So the fact that your primary care doctor or maybe your specialist that you're seeing has never heard of stem cell exosomes, this is only in the last, call it 5 years,
yeah,
that this new knowledge about how stem cells work is being studied and made available. But it is, if anything, the reality is even better than what I'm able to communicate right now. It's extraordinary.
well, it's something I think that we have to continually ask. I was just doing another podcast and on this topic. We have to continually ask our healthcare providers, and they have to stay on top of these things. And it's tough when they have a full time practice. I get it,
Mhm.
but if we're not the ones asking the questions, then we won't know.
Yes, you're
Yeah,
exactly right. If anyone is considering or has a provider telling them to get stem cells, what I suggest is ask that provider, what is the proposal of what those stem cells do? Tell me what those stem cells are doing. How does that work? Right. And if they say anything other than, well, we put those stem cells in, your body flushes and kills the vast majority of them in 24 hours. But in that 24-hour time period, they secrete healing signals. So we're really just counting on how many healing signals they can secrete in that 24-hour time that they're alive. If there's any answer outside of that, they are 7 to 10 years behind what
yeah,
we now know in the science. That's fine. It's nothing, it's absolutely not malicious at
yeah,
all.
yeah,
They simply just don't have the information and are using a mental map of what stem cells do that
yeah,
we now know is completely untrue.
yeah. Well, Caleb, I appreciate your time in explaining. I learned a lot today, and we will be sure to put the information in the show notes. Anyone who's interested wants to learn a little bit more, and we'll put that link there for anyone interested. Thank you so much for taking the time, and best of luck.
Gosh, my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.